Are we rolling? I am Ray, and today we are going to tackle probably the most controversial thing in all of religion and spirituality. The most difficult question to answer. Why does God allow evil? And today we will explore what we can do to avoid allowing evil in our own lives. First, we should probably understand why this question is so hard to answer. Or at least why this is so hard to understand. The little something called evolution. This monkey body is designed to pursue pleasure and avoid pain. So anything that's pleasurable, we want it, and anything that's painful, like this pleasurable coffee, both painful and pleasurable. And not just the monkeyness, but also all of our previous ancestors, the animals that came before us in our evolutionary chain. In other words, we have hundreds of millions of years of conditioning, avoiding pain and pursuing pleasure. And so, the light is typically associated with the good, and the darkness is typically associated with the bad. Racism. In other words, during the day, everything's cool, there's sun. You can see everything around you, it's the known. But what happens at night, that's when the beasts arrive. You might have a little campfire, but all around you is darkness, is the unknown. And we are biologically designed to fear the unknown, to fear chaos, because, well, chaos is the force of destruction. An easy way to think about it is the difference between stars and black holes. Stars are the creative force of the universe. They give life to all things. Whereas black holes, there is a supermassive black hole in every galaxy, pretty much, which is slowly but surely consuming and destroying everything. So we say, don't like that. We like the light. Light is right. That sounds familiar. Basically saying, anything that causes pain we think is bad by default. Now, there are three aspects to God. What do they call it? The Trinity or something? We're going to keep it even more simple. There's a negative aspect to God, there's a neutral aspect, and there is a positive aspect. The positive aspect of God is unconditional love. This aspect of God loves you very much and wants everything good for you. You could say it's the divine intelligence guiding your life, wishing you the best. When you pray, this is the part of God that answers. The aspect of God that's on this journey with you, enjoying the ride. And we could call this force Christ, because that is what it is. It's a hand reaching down from heaven, trying to pull you up toward everlasting life, toward the source, which is also God. And that source is everlasting bliss, whether you want to call it heaven, nirvana, Valhalla, moksha, liberation, freedom, the kingdom of God. Now there's a neutral element to God. I call this the law. You know, it was once said that the fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. But that, I would say, is a misinterpretation, or at least a misleading phrase. But I heard the other day, much better put, the fear of the law is the beginning of all wisdom. Not the human laws, but God's law. This is the kind of law that says, well, the rock that falls off the cliff does not care about the person standing beneath. It's neutral. It does not care if you're a good person. It does not care if you're a bad person. If you break the law, you're going to get whipped. Massa, no. Yes, I'm going to hell for this video. And then there's the negative aspect of God, which you can call Satan. But it's simply the destructive force of the universe, of existence itself. So you have creator, sustainer, and destroyer. And you might be able to see, well, the whole reason that we question why God allows evil, it's not that God allows evil, it's that evil is a fundamental aspect of the nature of reality. That you couldn't not allow it. Because if you destroy the negative aspect of reality, you also destroy the positive. And because neutral is the combination of negative and positive, you also destroy the neutral. You destroy everything. Everything, the whole system gets thrown out of balance, and reality cannot sustain itself. Everything is perfectly balanced. But you see, negativity is not bad, and it's not that positivity is good. These are just fundamental aspects of the nature of reality. The difference is human. Evil stems, or evil arises, because of human potential. So humans have the potential for great evil, and humans have the potential for great good. Humans have the potential for destruction and creation. But other animals, they don't have the same potential, so they can't do the same evil things. One great example, something that may seem evil to us, is grizzly bears. A male grizzly bear will eat the children of a female grizzly bear so that the female grizzly bear will go in heat and they can make love. Now, if a human did that, but we say, oh, well, the grizzly bear is just acting according to its nature. It's not actually evil, but you can see this is the kind of thing from which evil stems. The reason that it's evil for a human being is because we have a choice. And one pitfall that many people fall under is called paving the road to hell with good intentions. Because we look at the evil in the world and it's terrible. It's a tragedy. And so we say, well, it should not be. We have to get rid of the evil in the world. And yes, there is truth to this. We must overcome evil. We must transcend it. You don't have to fight evil. You just have to rise above it. But where people go wrong is that they get too attached to this side of the equation. And so one example is that if you see a wolf viciously rip apart a deer, someone might say, well, that is wrong. That shouldn't happen. We have to protect the deer. The deer. And so you say, oh, well, let's just get rid of all the wolves. Let's get rid of the predators because they're mean. They're not nice. And so what happens? The deer flourish. The prey animals are having a ball. And so they're mating and having fun. But what happens? An imbalance of prey animals eating all the grass. And so they kill off all the vegetation and then the land becomes barren. And that is what it means to pave the road to hell with good intentions. In the attempt to be nice, you destroy everything. That is why most people would make terrible gods. The first day on the job, let's get rid of evil. Good job. We did it. We did it. Oh, well, where did existence go? Where did everything go? Where is everybody? Congratulations. On your first day on the job, you destroyed everything. So one of the first things we have to accept is that evil is a fundamental aspect of nature. Not in itself, but because destruction is a fundamental force of nature. And evil comes from that negative polarity. Think about what a predator does. It eats the prey for its own benefit. What does the prey do? It gives up its life in service. Not to go on a rant, but that's kind of where the whole vegan thing goes weird. Prey animals are designed to give up their life. Now, there's nothing wrong with being vegan or vegetarian, but you can see that kind of niceness where you might think you're doing a better thing, you might think you're doing a good thing, but in some other way in which we are not aware of, we create harm on the back end. It's like, instead of facing your darkness, instead of facing the devil is behind you, pulling your strings. And so oftentimes we wear the mask of morality. We identify with being moral and virtuous, but all that can do, but the great risk in that is that we become blind to our darkness on all the ways that we're not virtuous, in all the ways that we're not good, because the more strongly you're attached to this side of the equation, you have a strong identity in being a good person, well then, guess what? The aspects of you that are evil, you will not be able to face it because it will be too much. You will not be able to handle the truth. And we all have evil within us because we all have these forces within us. It's just that many people aren't exposed to this aspect of themselves. And this, my friend, I find is the source of true evil, or at least one of the most tragic evils, because there are a few kinds of evils in the world. There is evil done by those who are only darkness, and there are evil done by those who are only light, or should I say, too attached to the light. In other words, they are simply unconscious of their darkness. These are the people with good intentions. These are the people with bad intentions. Both pave the road to hell. But I say the most tragic type of evil is those with good intentions because they try to do the right thing, but accidentally do the wrong thing. At least if you have bad intentions, when the consequences come, you knew what you were getting yourself into. This was the deal. One example is a story that Ram Dass used to tell. For one day, a lady was walking by a pile of trash, and she heard a rustle in the trash. And she looked, and she picked up a piece of trash, and there was a litter of baby gerbils. And she loved animals. This was like her whole life, was taking care of animals. And she thought, oh, what a wonderful opportunity. I'm going to take them home and take care of them, my little babies. And that she did. But soon she ran out of gerbil food. And she thought, what else can I give them? So she poured a little bit of honey in some water and began feeding them that. And one by one, they stood up, did a little dance, and fell over and died. One by one, each gerbil went into diabetic shock. Now, did she have good intentions? Of course she did. She wanted to help. She wanted to do the right thing. But it wasn't the right thing. It was the wrong thing. So it doesn't matter what your intentions were. Like, again, the law. Whether or not you're a bad person or whether or not you're a good person, the law remains unchanged. If you do the wrong thing, you will experience a wrong consequence. Which is why both of these forces are needed to find balance within ourselves between dark and light. Because this is where true wisdom is found. One way you can look at it as heart consciousness and mind consciousness. You can say love and knowledge. Why is the road to hell paved with good intentions? Because if you have love, but you don't have knowledge, you can do the wrong thing. And it doesn't matter how much love you have, you'll get a negative consequence. And those who are all mind but no heart, what you could call a psychopath, or somebody that's evil, prey and predator, they only take advantage of others because they think it's the rational thing to do. But the problem is that they lack love. It's like if you ever watched the TV show Sherlock Holmes. When you lack empathy, when you lack emotions, and you're all mind, you become cold-hearted, and it's easy to hurt others. But in the combination of these two forces, what do you find? Wisdom. Because when you have love in your heart, and you know the right thing to do, the outcome is always beneficial. Because you are living in harmony, in balance. You see, a system requires the balance of those two forces. We can say life, with a capital F, is the balance between chaos and order. Chaos is the death force, the force of destruction, and order is the life force, the force of creation. And for life to sustain itself, it requires both death force, and life force. The balance of these two forces is called harmony. And when one is in harmony, they are aligned with life. But death with a capital D is the imbalance of those two forces. Whether too much chaos or too much order. And if one is imbalanced, they are aligned with death. For instance, what is cancer? Cancer is too much order. The cells keep replicating. They don't die. Death. So here is a very important point. It's not that chaos or the death force is bad and the life force is good. No, that is the mistake that we make. It's that the balance between these two forces is good and the imbalance of those two forces is bad. As I said before, those who are too much attached to darkness create hell on earth. And those who are too attached to goodness create hell on earth. Because when you are imbalanced, you become a vessel for death and create suffering in the world and around you. The question is, how conscious of this are you? If you're evil, well then you have the devil beside you and you're walking hand in hand. You're doing bad things together. And if you're one of the good intentions people, well then the devil is behind you pulling your strings. You see, this is the law. And if you are a good person, this is the most important information to know. Because you could be the best person in the whole world. If you are imbalanced, if you are not able to face your darkness and handle it and process it and accept it, then that dark energy, which is very dangerous because it's the force of death, if you can't learn to handle it properly, it will either destroy you or it will destroy things in the outer environment. Think about a telephone line. If you were to take some scissors and cut in the middle of it, where does the energy go? All over the place. And so one has to be a vessel for life, meaning one must learn to handle both the darkness and the light. And where we suffer is that we do not like destruction. We do not like the death force. We do not like the darkness. And so we resist it. Much of our suffering comes from being unable to handle this animal body that is so conditioned to avoid pain. And you see, once you discover that the darkness and the light are equally important to wholeness, that you could say is the nature of God, totality, then it is much easier to accept the darkness. Because the problem is, if we reject any one of the parts, we also reject the whole. So to reject the darkness is to reject God. And that is probably one of the greatest pitfalls religion creates for people. It almost creates a split in a person's psyche where they're so attached to the light, being a good person, that they avoid all of their darkness. Not always, but it's just a trap that people could fall into. For instance, in Christianity, well, Christ is the good guy and Satan is the bad guy. So it allows people to project all of their darkness onto something else so that they don't have to face it. And you might see that all of the evil done in the name of religion is because of this. It's because when you have an aspect of yourself that is unacceptable to you, you will not be able to face it because it's unacceptable. You cannot handle the truth. And so you will project that truth onto somebody else. This is called shadow projection. You project your unconscious contents onto somebody else. And guess what? Because that aspect of yourself is unacceptable, it is also unacceptable in the other person. So I get to justify to myself that I get to be the hero, and I get to go and kill all the villains. These people are the devil incarnate. And so I get to have fun and go and kill them all. But see, these people are ignorant, which is why Jesus said, basically, stop judging people. How you judge others is how you will be judged. Because judging other people is nothing but a reflection of you. That is why they say, when you point the finger, you have three pointing back at you. Next time you hear somebody judge somebody else, see if those judgments can apply to the person who is judging. And probably 100% of the time, it can. So do not judge people in front of other people because you might embarrass yourself. Because you're spilling out all of the things in your unconscious. You're revealing embarrassing things about yourself. And it is through shadow projection in which we project our own evil onto others and then go and attack and pretend to be the good guy. Now you might ask, why do the good die young? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do the innocent suffer? And I would say you must learn about the game of life, my friend. Because in this game of life, the innocent are the wager. They are the price that we pay for our wickedness. And the thing is, God will not infringe upon one's free will. So if you choose to be evil, it will be allowed. And if you choose to be good, it will be allowed. And if you ask God for help, it will be allowed. And if you choose to reject God, it will be allowed. Why do you think there's this kind of conspiracy that in order to be successful in Hollywood, you have to sacrifice someone you love? It's called the devil's, let's see if we can come up with a cool name. It's called a deal with the devil. And they talk about blood contracts and all of that, but basically the idea is, of course, you sacrifice your soul in order to receive material gains or material success. And of course, that's a stupid deal because the material things, they just go away. The material success is dust. So you trade the only thing that really matters for dust. But in the meantime, during this life, you can do anything you want. You can have all the stuff. And you'll be protected by the force of evil. Which is why you could say, well, why don't the evil people go to jail? Why does nothing bad ever happen to them? And why do the people who stand up to the forces of evil, why do they die? Well, I say, don't get in between a hungry dog and its bone. You see, our souls are like fruit. They are a source of nourishment for the gods. Now don't get too freaked out about this, it's just an idea. But you see, the demons, they want to fatten up the evil ones. So they let them get away with their evil deeds, so that the fruit of their soul, in this case, become more rotten, because the demons like the rotten souls. So the evil people continue to get away with doing more and more evil things, because God allows the demons to fatten them up. So when the day of harvest comes, when the demons come to collect, as all of their material success fades away, and the evil person has to pay up, their soul will be ripe for the taking. So you don't have to worry so much about why evil people often get away with it. Because they don't. They are simply allowed to continue in their wickedness so that the demons can have a greater feast in the end. But at the same time, we might ask, well, why do the good die young? We'll come back to this. Well, if life is like a school where we come here to learn karmic lessons, as Ram Dass once said, would you be upset that the one you loved graduated early? Once you figure it out, once you learn the lessons you're meant to learn in this life, you just go up a grade. You don't need to be here anymore. And because if you're a good person, if you have a good heart, well, it can be a cruel world. So oftentimes, early death for a good person saves them a lot of suffering in the long run. But again, because we live in these animal bodies, it's hard to accept such a thing. And because of our ignorance, we can't really say, well, is there anything after life? All we know is that we are here now. So it is very difficult for us to wrap our heads around such an idea. And for the evil, you could also make the argument that God allows the evil to live longer so that they have no excuse. They had all the time in the world to turn from their wickedness. Now sometimes the innocent, they are the lesson. In other words, life uses them to teach us. For instance, if we do wrong and we cause the suffering of an innocent person, that pain that they experience is our lesson, because we will eventually be forced to pay back that suffering. In other words, we will have to face that karma. In truth, we are all one, so whatever you do to somebody else, you are simultaneously doing to yourself. So when you hurt or wrong another person, it's like cutting yourself on your hand. But you're just not paying attention. You don't realize it. And then eventually one day you look and you're bleeding out. Now, at the same time, we are also the lesson for the innocent. You see, we have to understand that our well-being on this planet is not the most important thing in the universe. In fact, from a higher perspective, from our soul's perspective, our soul is already free. It does not worry about the suffering we are to experience. But in these bodies, our suffering is the only thing that matters. Imagine a monkey and a scientist. The scientist straps the monkey to a chair, and in 24 hours, The scientists will discover the cure for cancer and heal millions and millions of people forever. But the only thing that has to happen is that the monkey experiences being tortured. And so do you think the monkey cares about whether or not its torture, its suffering, will result in the cure for cancer? The monkey only cares about its own suffering. It is only our soul, our deeper aspects of ourselves that care about the higher meaning of things. So we came to this earth to learn karmic lessons. The bad people will teach the good, and the good will teach the bad. The evil will teach the innocent, and the innocent will teach the evil. And we will attract the exact people who are able to teach these karmic lessons. So when bad things happen to us, tragedies, when the good people die young, when the terrible things that happen, our soul is doing just fine. It is simply from a physical perspective, as this animal, as this body, we cannot bear that suffering. You see, this is not an excuse that at the end of the day, well, what does it matter so much that what our suffering is? Even though, in a way, it's true. What is but a moment of suffering for everlasting bliss and joy and happiness and love and peace? So when I talk about things like karmic lessons, that our suffering isn't the most important thing in the universe, that does not take away from having compassion for the suffering of other beings. You see, if somebody is suffering, I would not talk to them about this. None of this stuff really matters. Because when someone is truly suffering, there are no words. But here we are living luxuriously, with the freedom to talk about these things. So it's just a bit of advice. More often than not, when somebody is suffering, the only thing that matters is silence and your presence. You don't need to be talking to them about all of these different things, because they don't care. That is why people get annoyed when other people say things like, everything happens for a reason. Is it true? Yeah, it's true. It doesn't help. Because we, as the monkey being tortured, do not care. We only care about our own suffering. And words, the intellect, cannot remedy this problem. Because the problem is in the body, deep emotional suffering, in which the mind has no power here. This is why it's important for spirituality to be grounded. Because a spiritual person who is ungrounded, when somebody is suffering, they would begin preaching to them all of these kind of spiritual ideas. Oh, it's okay. Life is just a dream. And when you wake up, it'll all be over. No more nightmares, no more scary things. You will wake up comfortable in your bed, and everything will be okay. Well, that's great. But what about me now? What about me now? And so a grounded spiritual person would say, throw away all that knowledge and just be present with the person. The ungrounded spiritual person would give advice. The grounded spiritual person would help the person heal themselves. Again, with a balance, because the spirit and the earthliness are two opposite polarities. When one is too earthly, they are in a never-ending cycle of temporary pleasures and desires and avoiding things, a slave to their animal bodies. And when one is not grounded, too spiritual, their heads are up in the clouds and they cannot relate to everyday human beings. So all the knowledge, all the wisdom that they know, it gives them a sense of superiority. Like, I know something. But what you know is irrelevant if it cannot help people. Again, imbalance and evil. These are the people who are slave to sin, temporary pleasure, and here, imbalance. And another important thing we should come to understand. Because children are innocent. So why do terrible things happen to them sometimes? Is an evil person teaching them a lesson? Sounds terrible. What is God's explanation for such suffering? Well, I would say God and the angels, they protect the children. They protect the innocent. But the problem is that they are highly sensitive to energy. So it's very easy for them to accumulate the energy in the environment. And guess what? If the energy in the environment is toxic, whether in the outer world, in society, or from the minds of the parents and the siblings and the people around them, then they can accumulate this toxicity and become sick. And so do not blame God for our own doing, because it is our own imbalance in ourselves that creates imbalance in the outer environment. Which is why I say the innocent are the wager in this game of life. If we cannot learn to be in harmony, then we create suffering in those around us. That is why children inherit all the problems of their parents. So whatever problems that you do not deal with in this life, that you do not figure out, they will be forced to. And if they can't figure it out, their children will be forced to. And never-ending cycle until one person comes along and stops it. Carl Jung once said, there is nothing more influential to a child than the unlived life of the parents. All the same addictions, all the same negative tendencies, they will have to face these things. The karmic lessons that you did not learn will be theirs. And so if you want to minimize the suffering in your life, you have to get your stuff together. For God's sake. Because when you are in harmony, you create harmony in the outer environment and in those around you. And you can prevent this because you will be able to handle the darkness and the light. And so no force can destroy you. Because when the dark force comes, you know what to do. You know how to handle it. And it only makes you more powerful. Remember that death is simply the imbalance of these two forces. Now let's look at things like, well, earthquakes and natural disasters. So much destruction. So much terrible things. So much tragedy. Seemingly arbitrarily. Why does God wipe out cities? For no reason. Not for no reason. Law. You see, everything is energy. One of the first laws of truth. And energy is frequency of vibration. And so, you can see that heaven is simply the highest frequency, and hell is simply the lowest. And each individual operates at its own unique frequency. But because everything is energy, and we are all one, the collective energy of all the individuals, the collective consciousness of humanity, has its own unique frequency, which is the accumulation of all the individuals. Now you could say, well, another law of truth, which is kind of like an expansion of the previous one, there is only one reality, which means that the inner world and the outer world are one. Because in truth, they are simply two opposite polarities of the same one thing. Same in value, opposite in degree. And so, the environment of the earth, the quality of the planet is nothing but a reflection of our human collective consciousness. The accumulated frequencies of each individual minds on the planet. And so we all contribute either to the destruction of the planet or to heaven on earth, simply by the quality of our own mind. You see, the more imbalanced we are as a collective species, the more death we create, and the lower we fall, and so we manifest death in our outer environment. We trigger the Earth's immune system, because what does an immune system do? It restores the system to equilibrium. So it will destroy whatever is creating imbalance, whatever sickness. Now, I'm not saying that humans are a cancer on the planet. Not saying that. I'm saying that our own inner toxic environment, our lack of psychic hygiene, will create a toxic environment for the planet. Now look, the planet's fine. The planet's been around here long before we ever were. So, we don't need to get all, save the planet, okay, yes. But the planet will just destroy us, and someone else will come along. The planet does not care, and we could destroy ourselves. And so humanity is the one that needs to be saved. We need to save ourselves. And so the more imbalanced we are as a collective, the more we will create earthquakes and floods and weather that will destroy us. That is why, I forget, I'm sure in the Bible in the end times there was floods and earthquakes and stuff like that. Why? Because the end times is death. So the more the collective consciousness falls toward death, the more problems we will experience, the more natural disasters, the more destruction. And if we reach a certain threshold, that is the end for us. Which is why, well, there are many, many people like me who are on a mission to create a more loving and harmonious reality, free from so much suffering. Not by going out and trying to change the world or try to fix the world, but by simply mastering our own selves. Because all that is required is that we fix the imbalance within ourselves and we fix the imbalance in the outer environment. But if you go out into the world and try to start fixing things, if you are imbalanced, you can do nothing but create destruction. So what do? We raise the collective consciousness to avoid death and destruction, to avoid the extinction of the human species by becoming the change we wish to see in the world, by raising our own frequency, by becoming balanced within ourselves through enlightenment, realizing the true nature of what we are, the divine essence of God, to become free from suffering. And when we are free from suffering, we allow the space for others to be free from suffering. And then, well, reality creation. When we learn that you are made in the image of God and that you are a divine creator, that you can create any life that you desire, regardless of your external circumstances. So you have the power to create heaven on earth by becoming a source of heaven, but then learning how to master your mind, learning how to direct your energy, the force of creation, in ways that create harmony, by creating your best life, a life that you love, a life that you enjoy. Because the more love and joy and peace that you feel, the more love and joy and peace you create in the world. So through enlightenment, we become free. And through reality creation, we create. And then lastly, well, self-improvement. Because, well, we struggle with mental health and addictions. We don't know how to deal with our negative thoughts. We don't know how to deal with our relationships. How do we optimize our body and mind so that we can be the best creators we can be, so that we can be free? And this I call self-mastery, becoming a master of the universe. And each individual on this path becomes like a lighthouse for the world, for those still stuck in darkness. And like a wildfire, we spark a chain reaction in the individuals around the world, exponentially raising the frequency of the collective consciousness, creating a more harmonious world. What greater purpose is this? So go forth and become a master of the universe. I wish you much luck on your journey, my friend. I am Ray. Visit my cool store. Much peace and many blessings. And remember, just be.